Welcome to Anchors in Time. My name is Rachel, and if you watched any of my previous videos, you may have heard me mention that I am partially sighted. And I have a couple of conditions that have caused this situation. One of them is a physical condition called keratoconus, and then I have some neurological conditions. I have chronic migraine disorder, I have something called visual snow syndrome, and I have something called Charles Bonnet syndrome. And today I'm just going to be talking about the physical eye condition, keratoconus, how I got that diagnosed, and how that's kind of affected me throughout the years. I just want to add a little disclaimer in here. I imagine if you're watching this video that either yourself has been recently diagnosed with keratoconus, or you know somebody who's been diagnosed. You might be a parent of an adolescent who's recently been diagnosed with keratoconus, and hearing partially sighted and keratoconus in the same sentence is probably a little bit scary. I just want to reassure you that the likelihood of that happening to you or the person you care about is very, very low. I am quite rare. Even for the time that I was diagnosed, the chances of you becoming severely sight impaired with this condition were quite low. And I was also diagnosed prior to what is the current gold standard of treatment existing, which is collagen cross-linking. But we'll talk about that in a minute. So where to start? Well, what is keratoconus? Keratoconus is a corneal dystrophy, and basically it means that the collagen bonds in your cornea have weakened, causing it to become misshapen, cone shaped, and it affects how you see physically. So if we look at a diagram of the eye, you see that your cornea is supposed to be a nicely smooth curve. You have a nice smooth curved lens, and the idea of that is that when light hits that, it gets focused into the back of your eye, and that's how you see. So when the cornea becomes misshapen through an astigmatism, so if you're short-sighted, long-sighted, you have like damage, or you have a condition like keratoconus, the light that's hitting your eye is no longer focused into the back of the eye, and your vision becomes very blurry. You might get double vision, all kinds of things like that. Normally this is usually picked up in adolescence. It's something to do with hormonal changes. Usually that's when it starts progressing. Now everybody progresses differently. Some people will have very fast progression in the beginning that will kind of stabilize over time. Some people have gradual progression over a long period of time. Other people will have like fits and starts of progression. Usually it's bilateral, which means it's in both eyes, and you aren't necessarily going to have the same rate of progression in both eyes. They might have different rates of progression. That is also very normal. I was diagnosed in my early 20s, and I had always had poor eyesight. I had worn glasses from being very young, so when I had some progression in my teens, I hadn't noticed, and my optician hadn't picked up on it because we were already used to me needing stronger and stronger glasses anyway. But my brother, who didn't wear glasses, was diagnosed with the condition, and I went to my optician and I asked him about it, and at the time it wasn't believed to be genetic, so he was like, I don't think so, but there is definitely something wrong with your cornea and we're going to refer you to a specialist. So I went to my local eye hospital and saw the specialist there, who wasn't a keratoconus specialist, he was just an eye specialist, and they did what is called a topography, a corneal topography, and basically this is a scan of the surface of your cornea, a bit like how they do mountain ranges, and it shows them how distorted your cornea is, what the shape is, where it's rounded, where it's flat, all those kind of things. And they scanned it and they were like, yep, you have bilateral keratoconus. There isn't really much we can do. We can diagnose you and you can have contact lenses fitted. So the treatments at the time were you had contact lenses. If your keratoconus had stabilized and your corneas were thick enough, you could have intacts, which were kind of like internal contact lenses. It's like a ring that they put inside the cornea. And if you were pretty advanced progression, you would have a corneal transplant. Very few keratoconus sufferers went on to have transplants. I think it was about 30% of people who had keratoconus would go on to have transplants. Myself and my brother were particularly unlucky in that we both needed to have a graft in one of our eyes. Kind of rare, but it happened. So I went and I had the contact lenses fitted, which are the same type of contact lenses that you would wear now. They're called rigid gas permeable lenses. They are a reusable lens. They're basically made of glass, and their job is to reshape your cornea. They often have a prescription in as well, so that you can see, basically. They take a little bit of getting used to if you've not worn contact lenses before, but they teach you how to use them, and they won't let you take them home until they're satisfied that you're comfortable with taking them out, putting them in, cleaning them, and all that kind of stuff. So you get lots of training to use them before they let you take them home. So I wore these for a number of years, and my condition just kind of kept progressing, but at the time there wasn't really anything that they could do. Cross-linking was not in human trials stage when I was diagnosed. It was only just starting to be developed. So I just wore the lenses. In, I want to say, my mid-20s, my brother's condition had progressed quite a lot, and my mum took him to see a specialist in London where they had started to do the trials for cross-linking to see if he would be eligible, and unfortunately he was too far progressed, and I think the other eye had stabilised, so he was referred back to another specialist in Liverpool that actually specialised in keratoconus, to have a graft, and he had his graft. And I was like, well, if this guy is the specialist, I would like to be referred over there as well, just in case I need a graft in the future. So I got transferred over there and started to have regular scans and regular checkups, and seeing the contact lens specialist as well. So this went on for a number of years. Basically, they just kept telling me that at some point my eyes would stabilise. And other than that, there wasn't really anything else that they could do. Anybody new who was coming into the clinic was able to get cross-linking. Unfortunately, my corneas were always a little bit too thin to have that done. So they weren't able to do that for me because, as with any kind of new medical technology, it needed refining. Over the years, it's been refined and refined and refined, and I was always just out of the realms of having it, unfortunately. A few years in, I think around about my 30s, my left eye finally stabilised, and it didn't progress for a couple of years, and my right eye started to give me problems. I was no longer able to tolerate my lens in the eye, the RGP lens, so I tried a few other different types that you can have. There's something called a hybrid lens, which is a rigid lens with like a soft skirt that goes around it. I tried a type of soft lens. I tried the scleral lenses, which are the large ones that kind of disperse the pressure over more of the eye. They're supposed to be more comfortable. Unfortunately, none of these were kind of working. I got to the point where I could only tolerate my lenses for about half an hour, like without any discomfort, and it was really affecting my life. So at that point, it was decided that I would need to have a graft. Normally, with a transplant, you would have the entire cornea removed and replaced with a donor transplant. Because the back of my eye was particularly healthy and it was a type of transplant that they specialised in, I was offered a DALK, which is a DALK, or a deep anterior lamellar keratoplasty, and it basically means that the back of the cornea is my cornea and then the top is the grafted donor cornea. And the idea behind this is it reduces the chance of rejection, and it's supposed to increase the life of the graft, because corneal grafts don't last forever, and a lot of people who have grafts have to have them replaced. And because I was particularly young, I was only in my early 30s when I had it, they wanted to be able to make sure that it lasted as long as possible before I had another one, because people are quite squeamish about donating their corneas, and there's not a lot of them about. So if they can avoid having to give you grafts every 10 years, they're going to try and do that. So I had the corneal surgery. It was Fairly quick. I stayed in hospital overnight because my surgery had been in the afternoon. Sometimes if you have a surgery in the morning, they'll let you go home in the evening, but I was there overnight. Surgery went well. I had a little bit of reaction to some of the pain medication that they gave me that made me a little bit sick, but they adjusted that and I was fine. They gave me some pressure medication that made me feel like I was on a ship, which was a little bit unpleasant, but then they gave me some other medication to kind of counteract that. And then it was just a case of like trying different drops and different different things until I was comfortable. And then I went home. You go home with what is called a bandage lens over the eye itself. So on the eye is like a bandage lens that holds everything in place. You then have a dressing and then like a hard shield that goes over the eye, and you go back to the clinic to have it checked for a couple of days, and then the time between the checks gets a bit longer, and you have a series of drops that you have to put in, a steroid drop and an anti-inflammatory drop, and there was something else as well. I can't remember what it was, but it was something to like heal it and to reduce the chances of having rejection. From a health point of view, my cornea healed very, very well. My cornea is very healthy, my eye is very healthy, but unfortunately it's completely flat across the top, and they don't know why. So when you have a graft, you have two types of stitches that are done. You have a continuous stitch which goes all the way along the outside, and that is to physically hold the graft on, and then you have individual stitches, and these are used to decrease and increase tension in the cornea to basically pull it into the correct shape as it's healing, because healing is not something that happens consistently. Some parts will heal quicker than other parts, and that can cause tension, and they use the stitches to release that tension so that the cornea goes into its right shape. And this is usually why people who have grafts come away from those grafts with much improved vision, because basically the cornea is the shape that it should be. However, I swapped one astigmatism for another, so instead of my eye being pointed, it is now flat. They don't know why that happened. They spent 6 years trying to fix it. In the end, they were just like, this is how it is. And I was like, okay, well, that's fine. Because I had gone from having no vision and quite a lot of pain to having a little bit of vision and no pain. So for me, it was a win. While this has been going on, I had started to develop some discomfort in my left eye. So I was still wearing a contact lens in my left eye. I also had a pair of glasses that basically the left lens was clear, and I had a tiny prescription in the right lens just to kind of balance it out, because I was getting migraines at the time and I needed my eyes to be a bit more balanced out. And I started to notice I was getting some discomfort in the left eye, which was stable. And I was seeing the nurse clinic, and I mentioned to them that I'd had some discomfort, and they took a look at the eye and they noticed that I was developing what is called striations, which is scarring on the cornea. So I was referred back to the specialists, who were like, why are you here again? We have dealt with you, why are you here? And I was like, it's the other eye. And they were like, ugh. So they did some scans and they discovered that the condition had started progressing again in that eye. So I was probably around about 35, 36 at this time. From what the nurses told me, they believed that this could sometimes happen, usually in women, during hormonal changes. So during pregnancy or just during natural aging, especially if that woman has some other kind of like collagen affected things or certain other disorders, that it could start up again. And they think that's possibly what's happened in my case. But magically, I was able to have cross-linking done at that time. With the advances of cross-linking, the tolerances for the thickness of cornea had improved massively. So I just scraped under, and I'm in literally like 0.4 something scraped under, so that they could do the cross-linking, and I got to experience that. So if you're newly diagnosed today, you probably will have been diagnosed a little bit earlier, just because the scanning technology has improved a lot, and you will be offered cross-linking, depending on your age. No, you might be a teenager. In that case, they will expect like 10 to 20 years of progression. They will offer you the cross-linking to be done straight away. So you won't have the level of progression that I had. But I didn't want to have another graft. Even though I can't see out of that eye really, it wasn't about retaining any vision. It was more about avoiding having another graft done. So when they offered it to me, I was like, yeah, I'll have it done. And also for the experience. So that again was a very quick procedure. It was a day procedure and it was done in clinic, in the hospital I was in. It was done as part of the eye clinic. It was just done in a room, and you went in and there was a chair and the UV light was all set up, and the surgical guy, he came in his scrubs, and I had a version that's called Epi-off, which is the most common version, and that version is they disrupt the epithelium layer on your eye. They usually, there's a couple of methods to do this. The method I had done was, it was basically like alcohol, so medical grade alcohol, not like vodka or beer or anything, on a little stick, on a little wipe on a stick, and they kind of like swish it across your eye, and it disrupts the skin layer on the top. For me, I found this quite uncomfortable because I have a very high tolerance for the anaesthetic drops because I've had a lot of them over the years, so they don't work as well as me. I also have the red hair gene, so anaesthetics don't work as well on me. They need to do more. I found that quite uncomfortable. Most people don't feel it. The anaesthetic works really well. It's just a weird experience. It's not uncomfortable at all. So I had that done, and then they do riboflavin drops, which are B2 drops, which are bliss after having that alcohol put on there, and then they shine a UV light in the eye, and it takes probably about half an hour to an hour, the entire process. It's a little unsettling and a little uncomfortable, but it's not a bad experience, and I think for what it does, it's definitely worth it. The idea behind it is that it mimics the natural aging process, which stalls the keratoconus progress, so it causes the bonds to start stiffening again, which is what happens with age. And it has a massive success rate. It's something like 97% of cases don't see any more progression after that. And I got bandaged up again. You get like a whole load of gel squirted in your eye, they put another bandage on, and they send you home, and you're healed within a week or two. Mine took a little bit longer because I am awkward, of course I am. Mine was about 3 weeks, but a lot of people within a week or two, they're back at work, they're back doing whatever they need to do, and it's fine. And basically that's kind of been it for my keratoconus journey. I have not been able to wear contact lenses again anymore, so I had refraction done, which is where they use a laser to determine your prescription. It's how they check like babies and stuff, because you can't rely, when you have significant sight loss and corneal damage, you can't rely on the Snellen chart to give you an accurate prescription, so they use a laser to do it. I had a pair of glasses made. I only really wore these to use my computer and to watch TV. Recently something has changed, and my binocular vision has got a lot worse, so I haven't been able to wear my glasses. They give me motion sickness, so that's something that I need to deal with. But other than that, everything is fine. I continue to potter about. I only see a specialist if I feel like I need to see the specialist. I have a little vein that's growing towards my cornea that I'm currently waiting to have it dealt with, but other than that, I am not expected to have any progression. I don't get scans, and I get left to my own devices, and it's absolutely fine. So I hope you found this video informative. If you have any questions and I can possibly answer them, feel free to ask them down below. I can answer what I can answer. I will be doing some more about the other conditions that I have in my experience of them, and just general experiences of being partially sighted. So if you have any questions about those kind of things, you can leave those down below. I will always answer them to the best of my ability, or I will point you to somebody who can. Thank you very much for joining me. I hope you have a lovely week. Bye bye.